think we've all been conditioned to expect surprises in your Socceroos squads. A few in this one that I don't think anyone would have picked. Can you just start with James Overy, obviously an interesting player, training at a high level, not exactly playing at a high level though. Is that a selection more for the future than the World Cup, or do you see him potentially being in with a chance to make your squad?
Look, I think, maybe for you guys it's surprising some of the selections, but I've said many times, we'll search everywhere, we watch all the players, even when they think that we're not watching, we're aware of how they're playing and what form they're in. And we're looking for, if they're in the squad now, they're a chance for the World Cup. Yes, there are some players that obviously can be more long-term prospects, can be prospects for after the World Cup, maybe the Asian Cup, or certainly the next cycle. But it doesn't rule them out of this World Cup coming up. And, James is one of those. I watched him at the Under-20s World Cup. I mean, Paul Ocon's very well aware of all the young players, having worked closely with those age groups with the national team. So, I knew what he could do. Watching him closely in Chile, I was impressed. In particular, coming in, playing the second match and starting on the left, the youngest player there, starting at left back. And he showed a lot of composure, a lot of maturity for his age. And then he went to the right in the third game. And then we started really monitoring him. We have good contacts at Man U. So we know what he's doing at training. We know how much he trains with the first team. He's getting games with the under-18s, the under-21s. And I just thought, he's worth having a look at. And let's see, I'm very open-minded with what that looks like for the immediate future and obviously long-term.
Joey.
Thanks, Steve. Tony, thanks for your time today, this evening, I think, for you. Another player that you've called into the mix, maybe one that we weren't expecting, Al-Hassan Toure. Obviously, he's come back to the A-League, man. He got that hat-trick the other day. But what have you seen from him that made you want to call him up, and what do you want to see from him in this camp?
It's the attributes he has. He has a lot of power, a lot of speed. It's something that we're looking for in that area of the field, in terms of whether it's one of our 210s, if we play with 210s. A little bit different to what we've got. So it's really the attributes he has makes us, watch him, monitor him. And we want to see now in our environment how that looks. We're also aware that he didn't have a great pre-season in terms of his fitness, in terms of how much he trained. But he has showed glimpses in the A-League so far, which we feel has a potential to maybe be selected for the World Cup squad, or if not, something for the future. That's why they're here. So if they're here now, we have to look at them with the view that they could be someone that takes someone else's spot that's maybe a little bit ahead at the moment. And that comes down to form, that comes down to profile of player, the balance of our squad, what we have. He's an interesting player. I watched a game yesterday. I think yesterday was his best game. But those type of players are that, where, the ones that are creative can be up and down. We see that with a lot of younger players and players that don't have a lot of minutes under their belt. And, he's certainly shown, the good signs, the positives that brings us to this point where we want to have a look at him. We're excited to see what he can do in training with us and possibly in the games.
Anna.
Just checking in on, apologies for some background noise in this, and just injury updates, obviously LA Shikadi, and any update on Jody Boss. And on that note, the guys are getting back, Riley and Jacko, what do you think they can do for you?
Yeah, the injuries are always unfortunate, and the timing's never good with those. And we seem to be accustomed to having to deal with these situations. But on the other hand, it gives us an opportunity to try different players, which I think we've already benefited from with other players that have come into camp, giving them an opportunity, and some have really taken it. So, they come into that forefront of our minds as potential players for the World Cup. And the players coming back, it's great to see, Riley's back from injury and started today, which is great. And Jackson got 25 minutes, which is the most he's had this whole season so far. So it's a long time in international football when someone's been injured for 2 or 3 windows. And in Jackson's case, we saw him in March, which was his best window for us and probably for the Socceroos for some time in terms of scoring goals. Scoring against Indonesia and then scoring again against China, a wonderful left foot finish. And then since then, we haven't seen him. So it's nice to welcome him back with 25 minutes under his belt. I'm sure he'll come in more confident and physically feeling better. So that's always a positive. And then we've got obviously a mix of some experience and a lot of players without international experience, that will now be really tested against Venezuela and Colombia. And that's what we've always wanted. We want these games that will test where we're at right now, and also players without experience to put them in an environment that they're not comfortable in, because, the World Cup will be the most uncomfortable environment you can have. And, and we want players that actually feel comfortable in the way that, they can deal with all, the difficult situations and difficult moments that we'll have at a World Cup, whether that's the opponent and the weather that we have to deal with and the travel. We need players that really can deal with all types of situations.
Chloe from Network 10.
Hi, Tony. How are
Hi.
you? Thank you so much for your time. I was just going to ask, what are you expecting from Venezuela and Colombia?
South American opposition. It's something that we really wanted to test ourselves against in terms of the style of play. They keep the ball very well. They're very structured. I think Venezuela is going through a change now as well. They've got an interim coach. So they've, between the last 2 windows, September and October, they changed, 15 odd players. So there's been a lot of change there. So we're not sure what to expect in terms of personnel, but in terms of quality on the ball and their discipline and structure, they're a very structured team, Venezuela. And then, Colombia is, a very high-ranked team in the world, and some fantastic footballers and players that are playing at the very highest level. And they have that mix, they have a lot more physical power, the Colombians, but they obviously possess that great technical skill that you'd expect from a South American opponent.
Marco.
G'day, Tony. Thanks for this, mate. Just fantastic about Patrick Beach. Obviously had a good start to the season. What made you go for him ahead of Gauchi? And sort of where does that leave Gauchi in terms of the pecking order of the keepers?
Well, Patrick's, we had him in a camp just to train with us for 3 or 4 days back in Sydney. And, we were impressed with what we saw. We've been monitoring him. He's playing very well. He's gaining more experience, more maturity. There's a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, and I think he's handling that well, and he's dealing with the 3 games in a week, which Melbourne City have had to have through this pre-season. I want to see him. I want to see him with us, and I think at the moment he's ahead of the other keepers, and that's what we want. We want competition. Players know that if you perform, you give yourself a chance, and they can see with us that everyone can get a chance to come into camp. So, and the players that miss out, we haven't forgotten them. We will keep watching them, and we'll see when it gets to that time to select the squad who we believe is ahead of the pecking order at that time will go to the World Cup.
One. Amanda.
Hi, Tony.
Hi.
You've spoken a lot about expanding the depth of this squad, keeping the door open for everyone. How do you go about balancing that and then also trying to create stability and making sure everyone's on the same page, singing from the same hymn sheet?
Yeah, that's always a balancing act, but without trying players, we won't know. I think in the qualifying campaign there was more stability in terms of the squad, and I felt we needed a lot of experienced players that have the know-how of those situations, those moments in a qualifier of what to do, because they've been there before. Hence why we played like a Riley McGree and a Connor Metcalf, who had no minutes under their belt in that vital June window, but their quality and having been there before, they played their part in helping us get there. But now we're in a different moment where we've qualified automatically, and I'm looking to make the squad stronger and better. And the only way we can do that is by trialling players in our environment, giving them a chance. I'm confident the stability and the relationships that you get on the field together, of course, that helps the more they play together. But we need to try different combinations. We need to see how that looks against different type of opposition, and in the end, I believe that will make us stronger come the World Cup.
David.
Hey, Johnny, looking at Vincent Toure, you've got Juric in there as well. Still looking, it seems, at the combinations and options up front. What made you go for also Juric as well, in addition to what you said earlier about Toure?
I think he has a very good, if you have a look at him, a very good physical profile. He was playing in Slovenia where, we watched him there. He was scoring so many goals, but the level of the league is quite low. So it's very hard to judge. But we've watched him now since he's gone to Poland. He looks quicker, he looks more powerful, he definitely looks fitter. He's scoring goals, assisting goals. He's in a team that's challenging for the title at the moment. It's maybe not a league that everyone sees regularly, so they're not aware of how he's playing, but he deserves his opportunity.
Ben.
Hey Tony, hope you're well. It's his second block of back-to-back friendlies in North America now. Is there anything you learned from the last window, and from an off-field perspective, maybe in terms of the facilities, the logistics, the travel and the recovery, which you think can help in this window and further ahead into next year?
I think in terms of the learnings, logistics, I think we've realised and learned what we can do in altitude, where obviously if we play Mexico, that comes to the fore. So we're prepared for that now, and we know how long we will need to train in altitude to be in our best shape possible if we do go into that group. It's a different situation now. The temperature's different here where we are. It'll be a lot cooler as well when we get to New York. The weather's been great so far, but they're expecting it to drop down to the early teens in terms of temperature next week. So there's not much to learn in terms of that area, but it is good to be here again in terms of we're just understanding the food that we get at the hotels and what we have to deal with, and know what we can and can't get for the players for the World Cup. Little things in terms of Wi-Fi connections, and when we're analysing games and how quickly we can get that data and how quickly we can get footage of matches and get that cut up by all the analysts. So we're trying to speed all that up. So there are a lot of learnings, off the field and on the field. We're excited to play Venezuela and Colombia. Great opposition. It will be tough. These guys fight for everything, and when you watch them play, there are no friendly games for them, which is what we want, because we don't believe there should be any friendly games when you play for your country. and certainly the opposition that we're up against, they don't play anything friendly, and they're tough and they fight, and it'd be a really good test for us.
Luke.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for your time. Just back on James at United, can you give us an idea of what life looks for him there? What we sort of read is having interactions with the first team, like you mentioned, but how regular they are, and just sort of where in the process he's at with them.
Yeah, well, he's in the process where he's getting called up a lot more often. He's young. He's actually turned 18 today, so that's how young he is. So his interactions are not that many, but in recent months, it varies, depending on what the first team needs, whether that's 3 sessions in a week, 2 sessions in a week, 1 session. They're trying to get his minutes up in terms of games, and they're pushing him up to train the 23s, play for the 21s, play for the 18s. So they have a plan with him, and like they do with all their youngsters. But he's Australian, and we're delighted with the progress he's making. We can see the physical gains he's making in terms of his loading at training, and how well he's adapting to that, and the rigors of a Premier League top club training when he's with the first team, and he's backing up very well. So we're excited to see where he's at right now, and I think it's a real proud moment for him and his family that he's coming into camp.
Jack.
On James, can you share with us, you said it's a proud moment, how he received the news, whether it was a surprise to him, and you said you've got some scouts or some relations with the Manchester United organisation. How close do you think he is to that first team level?
Oh, that I don't know. I don't know how close he is. Any Premier League club, and probably more so when you look at a Manchester United, they might have 50 or 60 players that they have on their radar, but obviously the boy's doing something well if he's getting called up to some sessions in the first team, and he's impressing the first team staff, whether that's their assistant coaches, the first team coach. So the boy's doing well, and it's still very, very early stages for him. And this is probably a surprise for him to get called up in the Socceroos, I'm sure. But I think it also shows that, from the Socceroos perspective, that, regardless of age or where the player is, we're open to seeing the talent that's out there. And, we know that there is a lot of talent. It's about whether they can, put that talent into practice when you put the work, because the backing up with the work day to day, week to week is the hardest part. Players get to a destination because of their talent. It's about staying there and keeping doors open and growing. And that's always a challenge, because I'm sure it's a great moment for him now, but you always have ups and downs as a footballer. And right now he's in a very good moment. And I hope he comes in here, and we'll do everything we can to make him feel comfortable, that he expresses himself on the field. He's not too nervous, and he just comes out and plays and does what he loves doing. And, you can soon see what type of personality a player has when he's with senior players, and obviously at international level, playing for your country. I saw him do it with the under-20s at training, very comfortable. And we hope we can see the same again with us.
Garby.
Papa, I want to ask about Matty Ryan's performance for Levante over the weekend. They lost to Atletico Madrid, but by all reports he played pretty well. And just what you make of his form at the moment, and what looms as a really interesting battle for all of us. With Popovic obviously in great form in terms of your goal-kicking position moving forward.
Yeah, he had a good game. We watched the game here in camp. He made some good saves. He looked confident. I think he's starting to get into some rhythm now after missing a pre-season, which is never easy. And I think, he looks a little more sharper than he was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I'm sure by March, he'll be a lot sharper again, because I think he just needs to get that rhythm of training, backing up, training after training, and just recovering from games and backing up. So he's in a good way at the moment, and we want the competition, and Paul's taken the chance that he was given, that he didn't expect, and under pressure he delivered. And the only way to learn that is by throwing Paul in there, and we've done that with the outfield players, and we'll continue to do that regardless of the position.
Okay, we'll take a couple more. Just raise your hands if you would like to ask a follow-up. Joey.
Tony, wanted to ask you, obviously in the US at the moment, they're having a bit of strife with airports and the like. A lot of flights are being cancelled and the like with the government shutdown. Have you been affected by that, or do you anticipate having to have redundancies in place in case your flights are cancelled this window?
Yeah, it is happening. We're aware. We haven't been affected too much. I think a couple of players have got some delays, but that actually could be a delay where, from their origin, where they started in Europe, getting out a little bit late, which affected them when they got here in the States. So we've got a couple of players that have missed their connecting flights, but we're prepared that we could get some delays when we move to New York, and we're just looking at some backup plans there in case that happens. But from all the reports right now, I think we'll be fine.
Vince.
Thanks, Tony. Zach Saxford looks like he's put together a pretty impressive first season in Scotland so far. Was fairly consistent in the A-League before he left. Is he on your radar, and how come he hasn't earned a call up thus far? I think he had an injury which might have been on your long list a few months ago that might have affected that. But is he sort of in the picture that you're looking at?
Yeah, he's definitely on our long list, as you say. He did have an injury prior to the last window. We're watching him, and he's another young player that's doing well, and hopefully he continues that, and we'll see moving forward.
Okay, last one from Marco.
Thanks, Tony. I guess you saw a fair few. You've sort of seen a fair few A-League games in the past month. I think you picked 5 in the. Is there any guys that were sort of unlucky that you're still keeping an eye on looking ahead to sort of March?
Oh yeah, look, it's hard to put a name to that. I mean, there are a lot of players we're looking at now, and form changes as well. Some players that maybe are still finding their feet a little bit now when I see the games, and maybe looking a little bit short of games or short of fitness. Come March, it's a different picture. We've still got 3 months before we get to the next window, and a talented player is still talented. We're giving these boys a chance that are all possible potential debuts, apart from Craig Goodwin, and there might be some more in March. So I'm very open to the A-League boys, but I'm also open to any boys overseas that, if they're not in the major league, they're not talked about. But Vince mentioned the player, Zach, playing up front. We've got Danny Juric, who's doing really well because he's in Poland. No one sees him, but if you had seen his games, I'm sure you'd agree he deserves to be here. And we've got our own local competition that, I love the fact that the boys all believe if they play well that they're a chance to go to the World Cup. And that's what we always wanted to create when we started, that regardless of where you're playing, you have a chance. But then when you come here, the expectation's high. And if you show us something in training, you may be selected in the games that you're here, a little bit like Jacob Italiano. We're very open, not knowing what we'll see. He was fantastic in the first 2 or 3 days. It was as if he'd been here for months, and he played both matches. And there are other boys that really struggle with the intensity or the level that goes higher. But that's not to say that they can't get that later on. It's just that first camp is a little difficult for them. And then they learn from it, you hope. They take away the feedback. We're constantly monitoring giving them work. The conditioning team is obviously in touch with them regularly. And then you want to see those boys grow. And the ones that miss out on the World Cup, we're trying to create a group of players, a large group of players that then can take Australia forward and hopefully be bigger and better than what we will be now.